Ника Gvaramia, директор телевидения Наталья, говорит, конечно, мы хотели бы, чтобы нашим соседом был огромный бескрайний океан.
Я просто хочу сказать в заключение свободу Михаилу Саакашвили, свободу Нике Гварамии. Грузия будет свободна, и дай Бог, чтобы она избавилась от прокремлевских связей. Плохие новости из Грузии, из Тбилиси. Ника Гварамия, директор телеканала Мтавариархи, оппозиционного канала Бедини Иванишвили, кремлевскому олигарху, сегодня получил срок 3 года и 6 месяцев. И его увезли в тюрьму прямо из зала суда.
Я Ника Gvaramia, грузин, директор самого крупного оппозиционного телевидения в Грузии, то бишь самого крупного оппозиционного движения против России, потому что, к сожалению, власть у нас прорусская, если не сказать совсем уж русская. Но я абсолютно уверен, что это последняя русская власть в Грузии.
Все крупные средства массовой информации так или иначе подчинены российскому контролю. Остался один независимый канал Мтавариархи, продолжающий сопротивление, с которым ведется жесткая борьба еще со времен Рустави-2. Ника Gvaramia и его команда подвергаются чудовищным, неприкрытым атакам.
Люди, заглядывающие на чужую государственность и территорию, пока вы практически все будете крымнашевцами, никакого будущего у вас нет. Да я бы и не желал хорошего будущего той России, которая сейчас граничит с Грузией. Я бы желал полного развала, если не безграничного океана.
Я хотела бы остановиться на фигуре Ники Gvaramia, который для меня настоящий герой.
Да. Ника действительно герой, потому что у него есть идеалы, и это человек, которого просто шантажировали записями личной жизни, потом его судили по абсолютно высосанному с пальца обвинению, его не пускают из страны, за ним постоянно следят, за его семьей следят, а он сохраняет чувство юмора, высоко поднятую голову и очень боеспособный. У него забрали канал, у них, у всех, и они там буквально там несколько недель полностью переформатировали, сделали новый канал, причем у всех сотрудников перевел с собой. То есть это человек, который не только сам имеет ценность, но и излучает эти ценности, и люди вокруг него консолидируются, когда это реальный лидер. И если я сказал, что сейчас главный лидер Грузии на месте, это, конечно, Ника Gvaramia, однозначно.
Как вы думаете, какие условия его освобождения, понятно, что у него катастрофическое состояние со здоровьем сейчас, его и Ники Gvaramia, когда их могут освободить, как только сменится власть или какова процедура будет?
Сейчас их освобождение связано с теми условиями, с теми 12 пунктами, которые Евросоюз предъявила грузинской мечте.
Спасибо за то, что вы нам напомнили за последние декады истории Грузии, которая нам очень близка.
About this hybrid situation around government of Georgia, because for all the world it doesn't so clear, because decoratively everybody thinks that it's democracy, but when you understand the situation, you understand that this is absolutely relations with Kremlin, with Putin.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Eurofile. Today, I'm here. This is Mo. And Scott, you're here. Hello, Scott.
Hello again. And I will leave it to others to pronounce all the other names because as you know, an American can never pronounce anything correctly,
No,
even in
no.
English. So,
We're horrible.
yeah, sorry.
We're horrible. I'd like to welcome
But-
everybody because today we're going to be talking about something extremely important. We're focusing on Georgia today in the case of Nika Gvaramia. Okay. He was a director general of Matavari channel. And I'd also like to talk about how Nika's case is connected with the wider geopolitical situation that we have in hand right now, okay, in Europe, and also, touching a little bit on the war, all right, in Ukraine and Georgia's position in that. Now, we know, just to give a bit of a context to those of us, okay, who don't have, all right, an idea of what Nika's case was all about, people who were not following it. Nika was handed a sentence of 3.5 years, right, by the courts. But his case reflects, from my reading, and this is what we're going to get into, it reflects the ongoing attack of the free press in Georgia and also the opposition, right, in Georgia itself. Nika came out in support of Ukraine, okay, and then three months later, there is the arrest and also his court case. In talking about the EU, Nika was very clear from my reading and from his speeches, and he said, Georgia will embark on a path towards the West. None of us can be bought, and we will not take a single step back. And at his trial, he said, I'm not looking for freedom. I'm already a free man. I am seeking justice. Now, to help us get through all of this, I'd like to welcome our distinguished guests today. And first and foremost, Nika's wife, Sofia. Hello, Sofia.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello for such a warm welcome.
Oh, no. Thank you for your time, your work, and thank you for coming. Thank
you, first of all of you, for your time and support and effort to do something for me and my husband and my family, and I would say for my country. And I will tell about this talk tomorrow to Nika, and I'm sure he's gonna be very happy, and he's gonna send you lots of warm wishes, love, and everything good. So first of all, let me introduce my husband, and I want to read a few lines from his interview, which was about Russia on Russian language. But those words, like those little, I don't know, few sentences, with these few sentences, you will clearly understand who he is as a person and what is his goal of life as a person, and also why he's imprisoned today. So I am Nika Gvaramia, a Georgian, the director of the biggest government critical TV channel in Georgia, which actually means the biggest opposition movement against Russia. Because unfortunately, we have pro-Russian government, or one could even say the Russian government. But I'm absolutely sure that this is the last Russian government in power in Georgia. Russia is enemy number one. Moreover, I can say that it is the only enemy of my country, the only enemy of a small, beautiful, rich European Georgia. All the tragic moments of the Georgian history are connected to Russia. 1783, Treaty of Georgievsk, right? The beginning of a great catastrophe. 1801, annexation of Georgia. 1921, annexation of Georgia by the Soviet Russia. I do not say any difference between Russia or Soviet Russia, the Russian Empire or independent Russia. Russia has never existed outside of Tsarism. It is the country of Tsarism, the only state structure that has always worked in Russia in all periods of history in Tsarism. And for the reason the state has no future, because Tsarism cannot have any future in the 21st, 22nd century, and so on centuries. The goal of Russia is to interfere because they know that either now or never, Georgia will become either Krasnodar Krai or a European state. My country is on the brink of survival. Russia has never won. It has always retreated at least one step back, one step forward, two steps back. So in case of interest, I can share with you the link of this little very good, I would say, one of the very good Nika's interviews. But what I wanted to tell you with those words of his is that Nika is imprisoned now for fighting against Russia first, for is exposing Putin's puppet government being pro-Russia, that's second, and for promoting, and that is very important thing from my point of view, pro-Western values, that is the choice of Georgian people today. And he's imprisoned because of this reason, and as you mentioned, dear Monique, on a very absurd charges for 3 years and a half for using his private company's private car for private purposes. So basically, I would add few more things about Nika. His goal fighting against Russia began when he was 15 and he was thrown out from Abkhazia, Sukhumi. He's himself the victim of Russia, and from his teenage, he's trying to free his country from Russia, and from the beginning, what he's doing and what he's living for is to free his country from Russia. So Nika's case is very emblematic, I would say, because it's a pressure on media, first of all, and he represents the media and freedom of speech today. And with Nika's arrest, Russian government, unfortunately, as Nika calls, and I agree, and everyone agrees here, that with Nika's arrest, they imprisoned freedom of speech in Georgia, which we all know that is the red line for all progressive and democratic countries. Yeah. Second, Nika's arrest is connected with corrupted just judiciary and oligarchy. And Nika is the only media prisoner, only representative of media who is in prison, and only person in prison under applied charges. So that is like brief and short info about my husband, who is now imprisoned because he is still from prison and was out more actively fighting against the world monster Russia.
Wow. Wow. This is it. This is the crux of it. Scott,
Yes.
did you want to come in with a question?
Just, I mean, thank you so much for that statement, for the passion, as well as laying out the information. Just a couple of basic questions for those of us who are kind of new to Nika's case. The sentencing was in May of last year. Were the charges filed? When were the charges filed? Were they before or after the Russian invasion of Ukraine?
Okay, so I will tell again this story shortly. First thing, Georgian government came to rule the country, won the election. They arrested my husband in December 2012. By then, he was a media manager of Rustavi 2. And after that, they took this company from Nika. And after taking this company from Nika, in 3 days, he announced that there won't be Rustavi 2, there will be some other channel. And in 19 days, he opened new TV channel, which is Tavari TV. And on the day he announced that he was opening the new TV channel, they gave him a signal and put charges against him and started this case against him.
Wow.
So these charges go all the way back a decade, linking the whole question of a free media in Georgia versus political control. But as I understand it, the specific charge that you've described, they built up, is from 2019 about the use of the company car. So why make the move from putting pressure on him for a decade and saying, okay, now we're going to put you behind bars? I mean, had his threat increased, or was it just simply the atmosphere of the Russian invasion on top of Georgian politics?
Yeah. Was there a trigger? Was there a trigger?
That is a very good question. The trigger was for Georgian government working on candidate status, EU candidate status, and Nika's arrest, the moment they arrested Nika, was exactly on the day, let's say, when our prime minister was visiting Brussels regarding this issue. So before Nika's arrest, few weeks or days earlier, they got this application in which there was a question whether they have arrested journalists or not, and they ticked no. And right after that, they arrested Nika and they arrested media manager. And we think that the moment of his arrest was exactly for these purposes, for not receiving the candidate status, because our government today, they're playing a very pro-Western. They're playing very pro-Western, and they are saying that they want to get candidate status, and they have, as a country and as a government, they are doing everything to get it. But in reality, we see that there is a pressure on media. They have media manager in prison and all other things that are going on today.
Yeah, yeah. I see that as well here. Okay, not to this extent. Okay, I don't want to say that this is the same thing. But for example, here we're talking about Russian penetration into the political parties, something that Nathalie, and Inna, we've talked about and discussed also in the past. Zelensky was supposed to talk at one of Italy's largest cultural events for 5 minutes to address the audience. It's the largest musical kermesse in Italy, and probably one of the largest in Europe. And the pro-Kremlin proxies started a campaign to stop him talking, and they did. So we have a government that says that it is pro-NATO, pro-Ukraine, so on and so forth. But in this regard, they don't stand up, right? They don't stand up for those values that I'm sure Nika has been fighting for so long, right? He was justice minister as well, from my reading. Yes.
He was. Like, he used to be a member of parliament after Rose Revolution. He used to be a minister of justice, very successful, I would say the best minister of education. And after that, he used to work in progress as well. So he has quite a good experience, let's say, and he used to have and has quite with his skills and with the possibilities and with the smartness like he has those tools, very good tools to use to move forward toward his goal, right? But after government changed, he left politics, let's say. He became a media manager. He started using media and freedom of speech as a tool. For example, Nika was the one who started giving platform to those people who were very pro-Western, to the people who have different ideas, including opposition. He was giving them this space. He was giving them the opportunity to use his tool for their to use it from their perspective, right? It was not good for the government as well. They didn't like it because it was a possibility to people to listen to the people who are pro-Western, who share the Western values, and who care about their country.
Wow. Okay. Before we get into the Russian penetration and give an idea the extent of it, what kind of relationship they have with the governing party, so on and so forth. Tamta, I wanted to ask you, before we move on, with Nika's defense, okay, what defense are you pursuing? What line of defense are you pursuing?
Well, thank you for this opportunity again. The defense is very simple. There's no crime. We have multiple reports from neutral organizations, including Public Defender's Office, including authoritative NGOs who have studied and examined the whole case of Nika, starting from the day one when the charges were applied by the prosecutor's office, including today when we have two judgments of two instances of the court. They all unanimously say that this case should not be even criminal case. If there's any questions, it should be under, corporate law, a civil case. So the defense is very simple. We have the truth, and of course we try to argument it before the court. However, judiciary is very, very heavily concentrated by the corrupt judges, and as you have mentioned, state is captured. We have already have that label by Transparency International Berlin office back in 2019. So all pillars of democracy are already captured. The only pillar of democracy, media, that is kind of still breathing, it's just us, the small critical TV channels, and mainly Tavar, because we're most influential and our voice is being heard. So as I have mentioned, we have two judgments of two instances of the courts, of Tbilisi City Court and the Tbilisi Court of Appeals. Unfortunately, the charges are really absurd, but the judges actually, of course, are biased, and they have the Tbilisi Court of Appeals didn't change Nika's penalty, the judgment and the sanction here they applied against him, and now we're on the way to Supreme Court. However, we don't have any hope there. If there was any hope, we had this on the first and two instances. Now, Supreme Court is more heavily concentrated by obedient judges, and the appointment of those judges were actually very strictly criticized by EU and US high-level institutions, because those appointments were made against our allies' recommendations. And of course, the appointment of those judges were intentional, so that the Supreme Court, the highest body of the judiciary, that can, overturn the judgments of lower courts, is very critical and important for oligarchs. For example, the head of the criminal chamber, Mr. Shalva Tadumadze, that is the head of the criminal panel, so he's overseeing all the criminal judges in the Supreme Court, used to be personal lawyer of oligarch Bidzina Ivanishvili. And he was at the time when prosecutor's office applied charges against Nika in 2019. Shalva Tadumadze was the general prosecutor. So those charges went also under his, supervision. So of course we know that there shouldn't be any hope regarding Supreme Court, and then we have to go to European Court of Human Rights. However, we also think that this is not a remedy for Nika, because it takes years for European Court of Human Rights to make final decisions, and Nika will be out by that time. So the only hope now is Georgian President Salome Zurabishvili, who has a power and mandate to pardon Nika, just at least for the sake of country, because European Union has defined 12 recommendations for us, and number 7 is specifically about Nika. So it's in her power to do it for the sake of the country. Now, as for specific details of the charges, as Sofia already mentioned, the reason why Nika is arrested is using private company's car for private purposes. So when government took ownership of Rustavi 2 and then new owners came, they filed a complaint against Nika as if Nika damaged the property of Rustavi 2. And that was implied in using Rustavi 2's car for private purposes. Now, the evidence of it, how Nika used private car for private purposes was a surveillance video presented by the prosecutor's office when Sofia was driving the car, her daughter, and the dog to the park. So these absurd charges, of course, everyone knows it. Even Georgian Dream supporters know how absurd the charges are. Let me tell you more. For 10 years, when Nika decided to go to private sector, when he left the previous government, he went to the United States, he quit government job, then he came back to Georgia, he did his private practice as a lawyer, and then he was appointed as a CEO of Rustavi too. And from day one, when Ivanishvili came to power, Nika was the first one who said that this man who is demonstrating himself as a charity man and a philanthropist actually is not a charity man, but a Putin's proxy in Georgia. And he's going to drive Georgia towards Russia. And he indeed has done it slowly, step by step. So from day one, Nika became the target of Ivanishvili, and for 10 years, Nika personally himself and his team back in Rustavi too, and now at the Tavari channel, we have been experiencing multiple type of pressures, like verbal, physical attacks, intimidation, blackmailing, surveillance, threatening Nika to upload his private live videos on YouTube, and many things. We have financial strangles and mechanisms, making law amendments to attack us and to diminish and undermine our financial stability, etc.
Wow.
So during these 10 years, government has also opened multiple cases against Nika, criminal cases. He has been summoned for an absurd cases like for his Facebook posts, for example. They have opened charges against him like for as if Nika wanted to throw the government. So for 10 years, he's been demonized. And after 10 years, they arrested him for using a private company's car for private purposes. So even Georgian Dream supporters know or know how absurd these charges are.
Yeah.
And I have to say and underline that I think this is intentional. This is done intentionally to demonstrate and to give signal to everyone. Yes, we can arrest you for any reason.
Yeah.
We can just make up those reasons. Yes, and we can arrest you for any time, anywhere.
Just walk in, take whatever you have, make your life absolutely a living hell. Make it for your family a living hell. You can't make money. Basically, they destroy you.
Exactly.
How is this having an effect on other activists in Georgia and other people of the opposition? So this is a cautionary tale. They're holding Nika up and saying, this is what's going to happen to you.
Yes.
And it's having an effect? It is.
It is, yes. So as Sofia also mentioned, Nika was giving platform to all those who were pro-Western. This was civil society, activists, opposition, politicians, experts, like representatives of society, all types, those who were pro-Western and wanted the country to succeed. So, and the businessmen as well. And after Nika's arrest, even the channel also has financial problems because Nika's arrest was a very strong signal to businessmen as well that they shouldn't support pro-Western Tavari channel. So oppositioners as well, they're not active as they used to be. And the temperature of political life in Georgia has been going down and decreasing. And there's no any like protest rallies or just some kind of assemblies that activists and civil society members would come up and, you know, be vocal about certain issues that are, you know, critical for our country. It is very clear that the Georgian life, political and civic life after Nika's arrest has been decreasing in terms of, you know, temperature.
May I intervene?
Yeah,
like, if you
please
see
do.
that Nika is in prison for 9 months already. So if you see the picture, like even 9 months before Nika's arrest and 9 months after Nika's arrest, you are going to see clearly that everything is polarized. For example, the demonstration for not receiving candidate status, on which like a lot of people, thousands of people came out to protest this, and it's like went down, and everyone was talking about how important was Nika to be out on that day, especially to keep this process in order to proceed towards something, right? And I would say it proudly, and I would say really from the bottom of my heart that Nika really is the back of the people who stood outside in summer and protesting, not receiving the EU candidate status.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Are you getting enough assistance from either EU parliamentarians? I've heard some of them speak, but is this just they're saying it, or are they actually stepping up to help? How can we also help? No?
Like, as you probably know, I travel for advocacy meetings and for advices in Europe, and I'm planning to do so in United States as well. And I'm really grateful that people really are interested in this case, and step by step, whatever they can, they are helping us. And how to say, like, every statement, every mentioned Nika's name in every room in EU Parliament or in Bundestag or in UK Parliament is help for us, because actually what Nika did from the prison cell 212, as he calls himself now, his letter out was the letter addressing the EU, addressing and telling them to save his country. He was not asking for his freedom. As you mentioned, he always says that he already is a free man, but he knows that there is a threat to his country and his country needs to be saved. So we do not have any hope locally. And me and my family and Nika, we hope, our only hope is West. So I'm sure that every voice I deliver from Nika's name is heard internationally, and I really do need more help to raise awareness. I don't know, to let people who are interested in this region know that it is not the case of Sofia's husband, Nika. It is case of the country. And if anyone on this earth and in this world, progressive world, I mean, is interested in this region and in this Georgia, they need to know that that kind of person exists and that kind of fighter exists, and they have to help us, because we are seeking help here. We are victims here of Russian oligarchy. We are victims of the world monster called Russia, which is the, enemy of the whole progressive world today. And we clearly see it. And the war in Ukraine is a clear example of it, right? So
may I also add? Yeah, you mentioned Ukraine and Zelensky. So I think before Nika's arrest, that period when the war started was very critical because besides all the good watchdog work that Nika and his channel was doing, when war started, Nika was the first one who noticed and who started exposing the Georgian government was not helping Ukraine, was actually working against Ukraine and helping Russia to avoid sanctions. So Nika and the government started making fun of Zelensky and attacking other Ukrainian officials. They have orchestrated fake Facebook and trolls and bots against Ukraine officials and Zelensky. So what Nika tried was to have at least like one Ukrainian official every single day on Tavari channel. So we would have their presence. We would show Georgian people that we stand by Ukraine. And this is what actually Georgian people really do. I mean, they do stand besides Ukraine, but it was the government who was actually working against Ukraine. Nika and his channel exposed Georgian government. We were the first one back in March when we noticed that Georgian roads were being used to avoid sanctions and to transport the goods to Russia. Only lately now, after a couple of months, New York made quite an intensive article about it. And then we heard CNN's journalist Amanpour asking von der Leyen about the sanctions and about what countries like Georgia they're going to do about who is helping Russia to avoid sanctions. And we were the ones who exposed Georgian government in, transferring sanctioned Russian oil and Iranian oil. We were the ones who exposed that Iranian cargo oil was allegedly carrying kamikaze drones to Moscow by using Georgian airspace. So international media started talking about that, but it is Nika's effort, Nika's commitment, and his team's channel that to show to Georgian people and to the world that what we have been knowing from the early days when this government came, it is vivid now. So world needs to pay attention. So Nika's role is immense and is critical. That's why they have arrested him at this critical point, and the timing of his arrest was intentional. Again, they have been targeting him for 10 years. Well, in the early, years of their power, of course, they demonstrated they were Europeans and pro-democracy, etc. They didn't arrest him, in jail. Nika was arrested just as a pre-detention trial back then, and he was released in 3 days because the judiciary was not run by them in the first months of their power, and he was released and he was acquitted of all the charges. But now, when the state is already captured and all pillars are captured of democracy, they arrested him on absurd charges. And again, for 3 years, they have been chasing under these charges against him. They arrested before European Union was going to give us an answer on candidate status.
And I would slide back a little about the EU's help. Like, the best help and the best thing they did, that they created a point in those 12-point recommendations, especially about Nika, in which he's not mentioned by name, by like Nika Gvaramia, but we were told that it is about Nika, and you can clearly see that it is about Nika because they say that criminal procedures brought against media owners, and only one media owner today in Georgia, is Nika Gvaramia. So in those 12-point recommendations, one point, the 7th one, and Tamta called it Nika's point, right? And it is about Nika, and it is a huge help. But we do need more support. We do need raise up not Nika's but media's freedom of speeches.
And all different associations. Because this problem really, I'm thinking back, and here I would like to also bring in Inna and also Nathalie. I'm thinking back in 2008, because this story of Russian penetration, the problems, the way that you have said, right? Georgia needs to be saved because it is part of Europe. It should be part of Europe. That's what the aspiration of its people. It's good for the economy, for the rule of law, for everything that it is part, right? It started back in 2008, this erosion of the rule of law with the war, and the Russian invasion of Georgia. Inna, I would like to ask you, because you're a documentarist and you're an activist, and also, your comments as well, but I wanted to bring Inna into the discussion. Inna, what did you observe? How have you documented, or how have you, what is your experience with this, with Russian penetration, and what has happened to Georgia?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Hi, and just would like to express my pain. It's my personal pain to Sofia. It's really my pain. My experience is very bad because I can tell that only one channel who is 100% showing my films wasn't Tavariarchy. And Nika Gvaramia, is a person who understands 100% what I'm talking, because I'm talking general, the problem. Not only Putin, not only Ivanishvili, but Russia itself. And you know what I'm telling, and Nika would agree with me, that the aggression against Georgia of Russia began not in 2008. It was the second part, but it was just first steps of so-called Russian Federation, Democratic Russian Federation of Boris Yeltsin, because he was the president who started attack Georgia and occupied Abkhazia. It was in 1991. And after that, after liquidation of our first president, Zviad Gamsakhourdia, after that was attack to Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. And Nika Gvaramia was only person who was shown this movie about independence of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. You cannot even imagine how it was. He was like a hero that time, because it was before the decision was made, before attack to Ukraine in 2022. And it was, such important, because even Radio Liberty refused to show this movie. I can tell you that there is a very big problem in our world, democratic world, in European Union, this understanding of Russia is aggressor, because even these so-called Russian liberals doesn't want to accept that Russia is aggressor until February 22. It was taboo telling about this. Okay, they are, ready to speak about reforms, about how Navalny will be, perfect president of new Russia, but they never tell about Georgia. 2008 was also taboo. President Mikheil Saakashvili was blamed, and he was, pictured like a very funny figure. Even journalists of Radio Liberty, because I live in Prague and I know very well, it is a kind of cliche that Zviad Gamsakhourdia was a nationalist dictator, and this was made by Russian propaganda as well. Even that time, even so-called free media, Yeltsin period did such a propaganda, and Mikheil Saakashvili as well made such a cliche by these journalists of not only Kremlin but also Radio Liberty. It's a shame. It's a shame. They don't want to tell about this. And when I'm, just screaming and shouting about Nika Gvaramia's case, they are telling, but what you are telling, Georgia is free country. What is going on? We don't care what is going on in Georgia. I'm just coming from Brussels, where we had the 5th Forum of Free Nations of Russia. And we are just talking about decolonization, because we see the key problem in Russia as empire. Russia should be decolonized, and after this, Georgia also will be free. Because now I cannot come. I was born in Georgia, in Tbilisi, and I have graves there, my grandfathers and grandmothers. I cannot stay there because I feel myself like in Krasnodar today. It's occupied by Russians. Not only literature, like 20% of my country is occupied by Russia. Yeah. But also itself, Tbilisi is occupied by coming, these Russians, good Russians and bad Russians, doesn't matter. They are all aggressors, and they doesn't understand what Georgia is, what culture is. They just came as invaders and feel themselves very, very freely there. So what I can tell you, I made an interview with Mikheil Saakashvili in September 2021. We have been in Poland together with Nathalie Vogel, and we met Mikheil Saakashvili there. It was just last days of his being in Europe, and after that he went back to Georgia, and it then started such a tragedy. And in this interview, I made an interview with him, and he told this that Nika Gvaramia today is a key person of real Georgian, you know. And I'm very proud that these words that Sofia was today read, these words of Nika Gvaramia, it's from my documentary. For me, it's really proud.
It was you. I didn't know that. Sorry, because when I saw this interview, there was no. Yes.
Yes, because I asked Nino to record him, because I would like to ask him to tell something to Russians, them to make understand what they are doing. But until now, even after war against Ukraine, I cannot express this very simple thing to Russians. I cannot. They don't understand. This is a very big problem. And we are doing things with Anna Fotyga, for example. I can, mention this name because she's the greatest woman. She's member of European Parliament. She's always telling name of Nika Gvaramia. And Mikheil Saakashvili also Nika Gvaramia, and we made many interviews with her. And several days ago, she also mentioned Nika Gvaramia in front of members of parliament. And I'm really hope that people in institutions organize, some foundations in the United States and Europe will understand this problem, that this is only problem for all the world, the Russian Empire, and we cannot reform the Russian Empire because it's already from 1991 until now, Russia kills. Russia is killing, and we cannot stop Russia to kill. We can only work to decolonize Russia. That's it.
Yeah.
Can I thank you?
Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much. And second of all, you're very lucky because when Nika was in prison and I was looking through his interviews, I would say this is one of the best interviews. He has a lot of good interviews, but this one especially express what exactly he's fighting for and why exactly he's fighting for. And this is a 14 minutes interview, but it says so much. And thank you for that, because that is really treasure for me and for Nika himself. And again, thank you. Lucky Nika had you here, and lucky you recorded this interview because it says a lot. And I really do appreciate you mentioning my husband's name so many times. And thank you for that, Tina.
Thank you so much, Sofia. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And we will keep doing this because this is extremely important. Nathalie, we've been talking about the importance for Georgia, okay, as a state, that Nika is released, pardoned, whatever it takes to get him out. Why is this case, right, for us who live in Europe, why is this case important also for us?
That's the $1 billion question. Basically, and it has been mentioned by Nika's lawyer, Tamta, we are in the presence of a captured state. And as you know, my job is to monitor such phenomena. and I keep an eye on hostile operations going on in Europe on various turfs, and specifically the issue of penetration of sovereign states by hostile entities. Now, Georgia, as such, is a textbook case for the next generations to come of a successful hybrid operation. And Nika is the victim of this hybrid operation. Because let's be clear about one thing, we are in the presence of not only a successful Russian operation of influence, but it's been also led by what is actually a Russian national. Bitina Ivanishvili had a Russian, is a Russian national. So basically, this is an attack on Georgia from the Russian Federation, which has been successful because he managed a total capture of the state, a total penetration of all pillars. We have seen the explanation here with Tamta, which is very crystal clear. Legislative not working, Georgian Dream has made a farce out of the parliament. I don't see the difference between the Duma and the Georgian parliament, honestly. Then the judiciary is busy using lawfare to prosecute the opposition. And I know that you know that very well, because we were busy last year raising attention on the case of Georgi Kalandadze, who had been the victim of such an operation by the Georgian state. By the way, I suggest that anyone who is interested in having a clear assessment of the erosion of the rule of law in Georgia reads the decision by the court that dismissed the request for an arrest of Georgi Kalandadze. There is an entire page that explains that Georgia is basically a failed state and there is no functioning rule of law. And this is why in no way he would be sent back to Georgia, let alone kept arrested. So we have the issue of lawfare, and Tamta explained that very well. Not only domestically, they are threatening the opposition at home, they are also conveying the message, you are not safe anywhere. We can get you anywhere. We are going to use Interpol with fake red notice or bilateral arrest warrant. We are going to get you. So it's a form of intimidation that we know from Russia. And basically, Bitina Ivanishvili has been using all the KGB tricks and tactics that we know. He is, of course, no longer in power, allegedly, but he's still pulling the strings
behind the scenes.
Yes, and so judiciary not working, legislative not working, the executive. I know we are hoping that Salome, who is originally a French citizen, will wake up to the case and realize that the entire European Union is looking at her, because if ultimately Nika Gvaramia is not pardoned, it is her decision. So yes, this is the state of Georgia. I will not dwell on the penetration of the military by Russian intelligence, and I won't even mention the fact that Georgian intelligence is actually Russian intelligence. So here we are, a country that is completely in the hands of Russian influence. And why does it matter? Well, because our freedom is not only defended in Ukraine by the Ukrainians, it's also defended in Georgia. Because if Georgia completely falls, we are doomed. We are doomed.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I was going to ask what the effect is, for the rest, either in terms of security for the rest of the European Union, if this continues, because this is Georgia geopolitically is in a very important position, no?
Right. I mean, they are practically in power. The question is, the next step of penetration would be using Georgia as a proxy in the security area. And that, I can tell you, the day we have to deal with Georgian security services attacking our interests, we are not going to find that very entertaining. So it is a mistake to believe that Georgian intelligence is not conducting operations. And it is also a mistake to believe that if they are completely penetrated by Russian intelligence, they will just remain and deal with their interior Georgian business.
Yeah, no.
They are going to attack us as well and our interests. So,
sure, because there are diplomats, there are people that they send, businessmen all over Europe under the name of, let's say, right, we know that they've been penetrated, but they gather intelligence, they make connections.
I'll give you a concrete example.
Yeah.
We had a Georgian national liquidated on German soil, the case of Mamulashvili.
Yeah.
I have not heard one statement from the Georgian embassy in Berlin taking a stand for this Georgian national that was being insulted post-mortem by Russian disinformation, smeared as a terrorist. Then they were implying that he was not really Georgian, like saying basically the Chists are not Georgians, or they are lesser Georgians. It would have been the job of a Georgian diplomat to stand up and say, this is a Georgian national and he has been killed by a Russian. Total silence from the side of the foreign ministry, total silence from the embassy in Berlin. It is a shame, and it shows how penetrated even the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, especially Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Okay.
May I also intervene here? You mentioned, Monique, diplomats. Actually, one of the biggest cases that Nika exposed is a massive surveillance case from Georgian state security services. When a whistleblower that Nika got in touch with and interviewed, and we got the files, secret files, Nika exposed the massive surveillance case when state security was surveilling illegally basically against the whole nation, including the diplomats. And that has been a massive case. It has been reflected in US State Department report, in the EU institutions, high-profile documents, including resolutions. So you don't need to take a guess where this information, when they're surveilling diplomats, is going to Russia, obviously. And thinking of the importance of Georgia besides the geopolitical location, I mean, in the context of Ukraine and the cases that we have exposed, like sanctioned oils and using airspace and the roads of Georgia, Georgia is becoming, if it's not already 100%, a black hole. So in these contexts, of course, it's important to keep Georgia. And again, the only surviving pillar of democracy is media, the few small TV channels. And Tavares is the main one in terms of influence and popularity. And Nika is the main figure, the only outspoken opinion maker, influential one that people listen to. And he has been isolated on a very critical moment for Georgia and for the country
and for Europe
during the
and for Europe. Yes. Yeah. Well, you know, we win in Ukraine and then Georgia loses. Do you see what I mean? It's really all it's all interconnected. Otherwise, no, there is no security. At least this is my view. in things. Because as you were saying, I mean, here in Italy, how many of people that are coming in, either Russian assets, businessmen, influence. I'm sure that in Georgia now, during the war, I mean, the war has been going on for quite a few years, but there's been, especially after February the 24th, there must have been also a huge influx of Russians into Georgia.
Yes.
That you've had to deal with.
Yes. I mean, there's so many Russians coming to us trying to have a safe shelter. But the incoming of those nationals are absolutely uncontrollable. We have interviewed many people on the border that have been saying that this customs officers just put stamps like without any questions. And it's noteworthy to mention that really outspoken critical journalists, for example, journalists of Medusa, the Medusa that has been announced as agent, they haven't been allowed to enter Georgia. So it's quite noteworthy to underline that there is a list of specific people, assumingly that Georgian government has from Russia, that that certain Russian nationals should not come here. Some Ukrainian journalists have not been allowed to come and enter the country. And there's a lot of Russian companies that have been opened by Russians now, and they're using some Russian nationals. So when we're saying that Georgia is helping Russia to avoid sanctions, there is this financial aspect of those sanctions that Georgia has actually really joined, because Georgia is part of this SWIFT system, and indeed the Georgian National Bank has implemented those rules, and there are certain restrictions. However, with the help of Georgians, and I guess with the support of Georgian government, Russians still managed to avoid those financial sanctions. For example, they opened the Georgian companies, the registered companies. They use a Georgian name as the CEO of the company, and they're allowed to transfer money. And there is quite an intensive report by Transparency International Georgia that have documented and provide the data how the economic dependency on Russia has increased from 2012, and especially after the war, and how export has been increased, how import from Russia has been increased, and how many companies have been registered by Russian nationals in Georgia. So these figures tell you that even the financial sanctions that we have joined are not working.
They've managed to skirt and move around them, right? That kind of thing. My, this is an incredible information, everything that you're telling us, okay, about the state of Georgia, also the repercussions for Europe, and then about Nika, okay, himself. How is he doing? How is he doing, Sofia?
Fortunately, he's doing well in terms of health and psychologically, but he's reading too much philosophy, and I'm afraid
philosophy helps. I think that in certain situations, okay, and whatever helps him.
Right, we look at it like we all, like me personally, I'm trying to find some positive, just a 1% positive thing. So he's in a good health. His psychological condition is good. Fortunately, the people inside the cell, inside the prison, they are very respectful.
Okay.
So what I want to say, and you understand that Nika is a kind of a person that some people do like very much, and some people hate. But even for the people who hate Nika, he creates the agenda, okay, like political agenda in Georgia and civil agenda in Georgia. So everyone, including Georgian Dream supporters, they do care what Nika says about certain issues. And everyone from inside, even people show that they hate him, from inside, they do respect him because of the person what kind of a person he is. So personally, me, and fortunately for me, for now, they take a good care of him in prison. But, and this is a big and risky but, we all see what they did to Mikheil Saakashvili.
Yeah.
We all see when Russia wants to do something and when Russia wants to destroy something or someone, they can do it. So I do not have an insurance, and I'm really afraid. I'm really afraid that at the moment they will think that they need to destroy my husband. They won't have any stop. So again, fortunately for me, in the prison, he is respected as they can do that because they do not have any order. Because they're showing their personal respect towards the person they do respect it for the decade, right? Because those are regular people inside, but we never know what Russia is going to do. We never know how they're going to use media manager Nika Gvaramia for their purposes. So thanks God, for now everything is okay, but we are not insured. That is why we need a noise, international noise, to raise public awareness, to do some publishing, to communicate with press, to make some statements. I don't know, even every room behind the doors, like every mentioned Nika Gvaramia's name, even behind doors, without statement and without publicity, is help for us today, so that people know that there is a chance that they're going to do something to other person as well who is influential. On society.
Because Tamta, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I guess.
Want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, things we have outlined the Nika's role, and it's especially in this context. I think I'm not exaggerating, and I'm not being humble, but Nika's role indeed is critical, and it's not. That is why EU has included his case in the 12 recommendations. There is no European future if Nika is in prison.
Yeah,
this is not exact. It's there. It's documented. This is what our countries, the most largest ally, has told us. It's written. It's there. So, as Sofia mentioned, this voices internationally is very important. There's one thing, we don't think that Georgian Dream is going to do anything positive. They actually want to say to Georgian people, say that, see, we're doing great, but European Union doesn't want us. And they are not going to implement those 12 recommendations, and they will say to Georgian people that, Europe doesn't want us. And actually their narrative is that Europe wants to drag us to the war. They want to open the second front here. And this is actually these words have been complimented by Lavrov recently, and they have been praising Georgian government. So again, the only hope right now is Georgian president. So if there is anyone who can make their voice heard to Georgian president, would be very helpful for us. And
we do. I will add one more thing. Like, this hope I have from the West. For the West is the hope that gives me the possibility not to think about psychological and physical damages me and my children went through personally through this decade. So that is the only thing that I ask for, only place I can ask for help, the West. Only thing that makes me feel safe when I think about the things you can do for us. That is like my personal thing, like my personal touch, my personal feelings, because it matters for me, because it is my children's future. It's about my daughter, it's about my son, and it's about my family. And this is the hope, like only hope I have for now, for today. And again, it is not, I am like, I can say it 100% sure that it is not about personally, my husband, Nika Gvaramia. It's about Georgia, and it's about freedom of speech, and it's about future of new, younger generation.
Yes.
So if we're not going to do that now, if we're going to lose this chance now, we're going to probably need more than 3, 4, 5 decades to go back to the place where we were after 2003.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, that came to mind, is that this is really just thinking about other people that I've talked to in other countries as well, in Ukraine. This is really about this winning, and also for Nika, and the let's say pursuit of justice, the pursuit of the rule of law. All of these things, all of these values are really for future generations, for ourselves right now. But we have a certain, there's a certain lifespan, but it's our children that go forward. It's the children's children that go forward. And what do we leave them with, right? Just empty values, or do they stand for something? Inna, I wanted to know your opinion on this. What is your wish now, okay, for, let's say, in the next little while, for Nika? Can you what are your closing words?
Can I present you one quote of Nika Gvaramia? He presented to our forum of the nations of Russia, post-Russia, because the first forum was in Warsaw, and there was very, very, great Polish journalist. He is really, understand what Russia is. And I told to him, what Nika told to me during this interview. My wish, of course, is that our neighbor is great ocean.
Yes, just an ocean.
This journalist, his name is Muradashvili. He told us, oh, this is the best. Who told us? It's Nika Gvaramia told this quote. Oh, can I tell? This is just everywhere. And he's told it's Nasha Mriya. Nasha Mriya, like Ukrainians say, Nasha Mriya. That's my Mriya also is that Russian Federation doesn't exist anymore. So all nations are free, because this is, of course, for Georgia as well. Georgia should be free. Georgia should be sovereign and to take back the occupied territories. So Abkhazia and Samachablo should be back to Georgia, and Georgia should be free European country. So this is my wish, of course.
Okay, our wish, of course, is to see Nika, pardoned and out, and back to doing his job of being a watchdog, and bringing all of the stories that he did on his show, to bringing out his investigations. And I know that that's a very difficult thing to do, because it's bringing that information out is there, Sofia. But we will keep on talking about Nika. Okay, it's here. Scott, Nathalie, your last words before we close up. Scott?
Thank you. Just thank you. It's an inspiration to hear all of you, because I know that there are many dark times over these past years, and for not just Nika to hold up a light, but for you to hold up your own lights, not just because of him, but because what you bring alongside him and working with him. And that light gives us a bit of hope, even through all that is being endured in Georgia and Ukraine and elsewhere. So just from the bottom of my heart, thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you. It was moving. Nathalie? Oh, wait, you're on mute. Hold on.
Yeah, 3 words. We will win.
Yes.
That's wonderful. So I'd like to thank you Okay, we will be in contact. Okay, Sofia, Tamta, we have our contact information. Inna as well. You've all been a great inspiration, I think Scott said. Okay, and also Nathalie said the best. Okay, thing. So keep strong, Sofia. Sofia.
Thank you. I'm trying.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you, really.
Thank you for telling us all about this. Thank you very much. We will be back with Eurofile at some point. We're busy. Scott and I are doing different investigations and different things, but we do take the opportunity every once in a while when we have a fantastic story to tell and a battle to fight. So this is Eurofile. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.